Hello to everyone who's tuned in already. We're still waiting on a few more people to join us, so we'll start in the next 2 minutes. Thank you. Hi everyone, so I think we're going to get started now. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on subscription traps. My name's Ramni, I work in the comms team here at the ASA and I look after all of our training and events that we host. Today I am joined by my colleague Emily, who is one of our experts within the copy advice team, and she's going to be taking you through everything to do with the rules around subscription services and subscription traps. To give you a bit of an overview of how today's session is going to run, we've got about half an hour that we've slotted in for the session. Emily is going to take you through all of the content and the advice, and then we're going to have time for a short Q&A at the end as well. So if you do have any questions, I'd recommend jotting them down and saving them for the Q&A at the end. And what will happen is during the Q&A, I will ask anyone who has questions to pop their virtual hand up. So you'll have a little hands up symbol on your right hand side. So during the Q&A, if you just pop your hands up if you've got any questions, and then you'll be able to ask those directly to Emily. So I'm going to hand over to Emily now, and she's going to get started.
Thanks, Ramni. I hope you can all see the slides now. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily. I work on the copy advice team, as Ramni explained. And thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you find the session today useful. So I'll just start off with a quick run through of the content of today's session. So firstly, we'll take a look at what a subscription trap actually is and what it is that turns advertising for legitimate subscription services into subscription traps and how you can avoid doing so in your marketing. This will mainly involve looking at significant conditions as defined in the code and what they are and where they should appear in ads in practice. And we'll also take a look at some examples to put these things into context and have a think about anything else that could apply. And yeah, as Ramni explained, we'll have some time for questions at the end as well. So to start off with, what makes an ad for a subscription service problematic? So something will be a subscription trap if a consumer gets trapped into an ongoing commitment after signing up without knowing the details before they've done so. So there's obviously nothing wrong with offering a promotion like a free trial or an introductory offer for a subscription service, but that will be considered a subscription trap if the ad encourages a consumer to sign up and that consumer gets trapped into an ongoing commitment without knowing the details of that commitment. If a consumer must input payment details in order to take advantage of a promotion and an ad leads a consumer to unknowingly agree to an ongoing payment plan, it will be considered misleading by the ASA. And usually this can happen for two reasons. It might happen because an ad omits significant conditions, or if the ad includes all the significant conditions, it doesn't present these in a sufficiently clear way. And often that can be due to the size and position of the information, but it can also apply if the conditions are worded in an ambiguous or confusing way. It's also best to double check everything because we do see ads which sometimes just have the incorrect information in due to error. So for example, things like a closing date might not be updated. So the main thing to think about with subscription services and offering promotions for those are the significant information. Where is it and is it all included? And this is the code rule that applies to this. It's code rule 8.17 and this is in section 8 of the code which relates to promotional marketing. So as you can see from the slide, this rule says that ads which refer to promotions must include all significant conditions or information, where the omission of that information is likely to be misleading. And the sort of information which, if omitted, will make an ad misleading is information which the consumer needs to have a full understanding of the promotion and what it is that they're signing up to before they do that, so when they initially see the ad. The ASA has invested quite a lot of ads under this code rule, so you can of course go and have a look at those if it would be useful to see how they apply this code rule in practice. You can search under the rule on our website and take a look at some rulings, or you can have a look at our guidance, which is called Terms and Conditions in Promotional Marketing. But we're going to go into it in a bit more detail now, and we've got some examples coming up in the presentation as well. So how does this rule apply specifically to subscription services? CAP has previously carried out some work on the application of this rule specifically in relation to promotions for subscription services, and they found that the key information which needs to be included to ensure that a consumer has a full understanding of the service that they're signing up for is whether a paid subscription starts automatically after the trial unless cancelled, the extent of the financial commitment if the subscription is not cancelled during the trial. And these aren't the only significant conditions, but these were identified as those which would usually need to be included in an ad to ensure that the consumer has a full understanding about what's on offer. It's likely that other significant conditions which will also apply, and we'll take a look at those now. So the other significant conditions that will apply will depend on what's being offered and on the nature of the promotion. So it's not, exactly the same significant conditions which will apply to all promotions. But here are a few examples of the types of things which can be considered significant. So to give some examples, if a promotion like a free trial or a discounted initial price applies to new subscriptions only, rather than renewals for that, then that's a restriction and that should be clearly included in the ad. Other restrictions might be things like a limitation to 1 per household. Or if the promotion offers entry into a prize draw with people who sign up, the ad must include details about the prize draw, including the nature and number of the prizes. Sometimes we see subscriptions which offer a gift with new subscriptions, And if that's the case, the ad must make it clear if there are any restrictions on the availability of the free gift. And there are also specific rules in Section 8 which relate to availability of promotional items, as well as guidance on our website. And one that is likely to apply to everything that has a closing date is that the ad must include that closing date. Okay, so we've looked at the types of things that are likely to be significant conditions, specifically in relation to subscription services. But let's take a look at where those should be included. So the guidance which relates specifically to free trials and other promotional offers for subscriptions states that they must immediately follow the most prominent references to the offer. So on the slide now, there's a mock-up of an acceptable presentation of that information. So as you can see, it's immediately below the main reference to the offer. It's clear and it's prominent. The text is legible and it's not written in an ambiguous or confusing way. So consumers are going to know from seeing that exactly what that promotion is. We refer to the most prominent references to the offer because in some media, particularly websites or long emails, there might be lots of different references to the free trial or other offer across that web page. So the ASA will assess ads on a case-by-case basis, and we'll consider the presentation of the overall ad and whether that overall presentation could mislead. But this information must accompany the most prominent references to the offer, rather than necessarily appearing immediately below or alongside every single reference that appears in that situation. So in that situation, for any less prominent references, marketers should still ensure that they won't mislead about the nature of the offer. So we would advise that these less prominent references would still direct consumers to that significant information by, for example, using an asterisk, which appears next to those claims, which directs consumers to the qualifying information on the same page. And things that won't be considered acceptable are things like only including that significant information at the end of a long web page or at the end of a long email. If it's hidden in big blocks of text, so it's difficult to identify where that information is, then that will be problematic. If it's very small, then that will be a problem. And things appearing in a pop-up box is likely to be a problem as well. So we do sometimes get queries in copy advice from advertisers who say that they can't fit all the significant conditions in the ad, asking what they need to do instead. And the code does address this possibility. And there's a specific code rule, 8.18, which is on the slide now. And this rule says that ads which are significantly limited by time or space must include as much information as practicable and direct consumers to an easily accessible alternative source where they can be accessed. But it's really important to stress that this will probably only apply in very limited situations and to very limited media types. The ASA is likely to expect advertisers to do everything they can to include significant conditions in the advertising itself, and situations which are considered sufficiently limited by time or space are likely to only be things like sponsored ads on search engine sites and extremely small banner ads. But even then, if it's not possible to include significant conditions within an ad, marketers should really carefully consider whether it's appropriate for them to be advertising that promotion in that media. On the slide here, I've written a list of things that won't be considered limited by time and space. So things that are more obvious, like email and websites, most banner ads and press or magazine ads. But even text messages are likely to be unacceptable to not include that information. In the past, the ASA has upheld an ad which didn't include that information in the text message. And similarly with media where there might be a character limit, like Twitter, if you can include an image which can include all of that significant information, then the ASA is unlikely to consider that media sufficiently limited by time and space as well. So that's one way to think about it. If you can include an image with that information in, then you should be doing that. So the focus of today is subscriptions with promotional offers. And these do tend to be the most common forms of subscription traps ruled on by the ASA. But ads for subscription services can still be considered misleading by the ASA, even if they don't advertise a promotion. So whereas Section 8 and 8.17 won't apply to ads which don't include a promotion, because that code section applies to promotional marketing only, there are still code rules in Section 3 which deal with general misleadingness, which will apply to ads, and they're likely to apply in a very similar way to 8.17. The code rules that are likely to apply are 3.3, 3.9 and 3.10, and of course there may be others that apply, but we'll take a look at these. So code rule 3.3 states that marketing communications must not mislead the consumer by omitting material information or by hiding material information or presenting it in an unclear, unintelligible, ambiguous or untimely manner. So material information is information that the consumer needs to make an informed decision in relation to a product. How and where this needs to be presented will depend on the context and the medium. So as we said, the ASA will assess everything on a case-by-case basis, but it's important to make sure that that information is really clear, it's not presented in a confusing way, it's not ambiguous, and it's not hidden. And rules 3.9 and 3.10 also apply, and these state that marketing communications must state significant limitations and qualifications. And qualifications can clarify, but they shouldn't contradict any main claims that they qualify. So although it will depend on the individual case, when advertising subscription services, material information will usually be very similar to things that will be considered significant conditions if that were a promotion. And things like how to discuss and the financial commitment should normally be included. So we'll move on to a few examples to give these rules a bit of context. So this is the first example. This was an ad which appeared on Facebook for British Railway Modelling magazine. As you can see on the slide, the ad states £60 goodie bag, ticket to Worley and 5 issues of BRM, all for just £5. Click here to claim this ridiculous offer. And then there's further text there which states free entry plus free goodie bag and free entry into our prize draw, 5 issues for £5. So the complainants in this case challenged whether the ad was misleading because they found that readers would be tied into a yearly subscription to the magazine, and they felt that the ad hadn't made that information clear. In this case, after signing up and receiving the first 5 issues, consumers would automatically be charged for the subscription via direct debit, and the cost was £12.49 per quarter. The advertiser replied to the inquiry from the ASA and said that the landing page that ad linked to clearly stated that the offer moved to a quarterly direct debit of £12.49 after the first 5 issues that were advertised. And they also said that on the landing page, which this linked directly to, there were lots of mentions of the word subscription or subscribe. So they felt that that was clear enough to the consumer. And they also explained that consumers were able to cancel at any time by calling up to cancel. But the ASA upheld the complaint because although the information about the subscription terms were on the landing page, it wasn't included in the ad itself. So as we've discussed, information about the subscription term and the charge will be considered material information that's likely to influence a consumer's decision about the promotion, and so that would need to be made sufficiently clear in the advertising, the initial advertising for the offer. So the ASA concluded that the omission of that information, specifically the subscription cost and the minimum term from the ad, was misleading and breached the code, and told the advertiser to make sure that they included that in the future. Here's a second example, so this time for a beer subscription box. This was a leaflet that the consumer had, which stated, free case of craft beer, exclusive free pack of 8 craft beers from the UK's #1 craft beer club. And it featured a red bubble with the text 5.95 P&P. So people had to pay postage and packaging and input their payment details to do that. So the complainant found, when they looked into things further, that to claim the free crate of beer, consumers were required to enrol on a paid-for subscription. The ASA investigated this and found that in order for consumers to claim the free crate, they had to agree to enrol onto a paid-for subscription service, which cost £24 a month. And to avoid that cost, consumers had to cancel their subscription at least 2 days before the 28-day billing period. So the back of the leaflet's also on the slide here, and that featured further reference to the free crate of beer, as well as a prominent graphical illustration outlining what consumers had to do to obtain it. And because the focus of the ad was on the free crate of beer, it should have made it sufficiently clear that the offer was conditional upon consumers agreeing to subscribe for a paid membership service. So, and as this was information that was likely to affect a consumer's decision whether or not to use that offer, it needed to be presented from the outset in the ad. So hopefully we've covered in enough detail the main issues when advertising subscriptions and promotions, mainly including all of the significant conditions or material information. But it's important to remember that the whole code will apply to the ads, and there might be other things that advertisers will need to consider. So as we know, there are lots of different types of products that consumers can buy on subscription now. We've seen examples for a magazine and for beer. I've also seen ads for coffee subscription services, other alcohol products like gin, food subscription boxes, spices, clothes, and even children's things like children's toys. So depending on what you're offering, it's important to make sure that the ad complies with the relevant rules. And you can look at all of these in the code, and there's also guidance on each of them. But just to give a few examples, promotions for alcohol shouldn't imply, condone, or encourage excessive consumption of alcohol. And this could be a risk if advertising a regular delivery of alcohol, so it's just something to watch out for. And there are other alcohol rules in section 16 which will also apply. For example, not linking alcohol ads with things like sexual success or implying that alcohol is the key component to the success of a social event. Other things, ads for foods should not make health claims unless they are claims which are authorised on the EU Register of Health and Nutritional Claims. So again, section 15 will apply to ads for food products, so it's worth having a look at those if that's what you're advertising. And a lot of ads at the moment might be making environmental claims about the product that they're selling in a subscription service, and section 11 is likely to apply to those. There are particular rules about making environmental claims and the type of evidence that you would need to have to support those. And finally, advertisers should ensure that any savings claims which are being made, so for example, claims to save on the RRP of the products that you receive in the subscription box by subscribing, must comply with the rules and the guidance on pricing. And essentially, they say that if you're making a saving claim, then you must be able to demonstrate that the full or usual price stated is the genuine usual selling price of those products, to ensure that the saving that you're claiming the customer will make is a meaningful, genuine saving. Okay, so just to summarise what we've gone through today, the main things to think about when advertising to ensure that an ad for a promotion for a subscription service doesn't unknowingly trap consumers into an ongoing subscription. Are including all the significant conditions or material information, thinking carefully about where that's presented, and usually that should be presented immediately by the main references to that promotion in the ad. And finally, make sure that you think about the rest of the code. So I think before we take some questions, Ramneet's just going to run through other resources that are available. And then we can go on to take some questions.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Emily. So, Emily, would you mind just going to the next slide for me?
Yeah, oh, sorry.
No worries. Thank you. So just to give you guys a little bit more information about some of the training options that we have available, we do have an e-learning offering. So if you are interested in a particular sector, whether it's alcohol, gambling, promotional marketing, or social media, we've got lots of different modules that are up on our e-learning website, and we run regular promotions as well and discounts. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about those, then do just drop us an email and let me know. And as well as that, we also have, Emily, would you mind going to the next slide, please?
There we go.
Thank you. We're also on Twitter, so I definitely recommend following us on ASA and the CAP page, because we're regularly sharing resources and advice on there. We've also got our Insight newsletter, which is really helpful. The copy advice team regularly write insight pieces on different topics, so it's worth signing up for those if you're interested in getting more advice and guidance. And as well as all that, we do run training seminars and bespoke presentations for organizations. So if there's anything in particular that you've heard from today's session that you think actually, you know, myself or my team might benefit from knowing a bit more about that in further detail, then just let me know, and it can definitely be something that we can discuss further. But I think now we're going to take some questions, if anyone has questions. So like I mentioned at the start, if you have a question, you should have a little hands up button. So you can click that, and then it will notify me that you want to ask a question, and then you can ask your question directly to Emily. So if anyone's got a question, just pop your little virtual hand up. Okay, Maria, I think we've got a question from you, so I'm just going to unmute your microphone. Okay, Maria, if you've got a question, you might need to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me? It says I'm unmuted.
Yeah, perfect.
I've just got two questions actually. One, is it possible to get a copy of the slides? I didn't know if you were going to provide those just
no worries.
Afterthought.
I'll send an email with a copy of the slides and a link to the recording of the session as well.
Oh, that'd be brilliant, thank you. My other question was just, I know you touched on it a little bit briefly. I work in the financial sector, so we have to, on financial promotions, so we abide by the FCA rules as well as yourselves. One thing we do get challenged a lot about is using kind of the one click away thing. I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit, that you could link on it, but I was just sort of after you know, your thoughts on using this kind of one click away method. They kind of just want to have like terms and conditions apply and then link through, and we always sort of argue that that's not sufficient enough. So it was just kind of after your thoughts on that, really.
Oh, yeah, so if it's a financial product that's regulated by the FCA, it's likely that the ASA wouldn't actually regulate the kind of more technical aspects of any of those financial products, but the ASA would look at non-technical aspects obviously making that definition, kind of defining between what's technical and what isn't, can sometimes be difficult and is done on a case-by-case basis. But if it's a non-technical aspect, we would, as covered, we would expect kind of any information that's necessary to be included in the ad itself, rather than a click away. So if there are significant conditions which apply to anything that is within the ASA's remit, then they would need to be in the ad itself, rather than having a click away. Other kind of longer terms and conditions could potentially be included a click away, but the significant ones should always be included in the advertising.
That's what we say, but it's just nice to hear it from yourselves. Thank you.
Oh, no worries.
Brilliant. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, it doesn't look like we've got any questions from anybody else. So I think we will end things here. And what I will do, like I mentioned, I will send everybody a copy of the slides and a copy of the recording as well. And then, of course, if you've got any sort of technical questions that you want to follow up with, I'm sure either myself or Emily will be more than happy to help. So thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.